I got a question from a subscriber about chord progressions, how they're formed, and how to use them on bass. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you all about that, really. Everything I'm going to do is from this sheet. You can download that below. And we're in the key of E major. This is E major. There are lots of different types of chord progressions, different keys, different tonalities, but I'm going to work with this. The principles are the same throughout. So the first thing to ask is, what is a chord? Well, it's 3 or more notes played together at the same time. And that's a very simple chord. This is where you get the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale, and you play them together. That's not really something that you're going to play on the bass, but here's a more bass-friendly chord shape here, where we're using a 7th chord. And all that is where you add the 7th note of the scale into the party. So 1, 3, 5, 7. That's an arpeggio. That is more what we play as bass players. But if you play a few of those notes together at the same time, you get a chord. Very quickly, you have the red blob is the root. The G sharp is the major third note of the scale. And the D sharp is the major 7th. And I'm using fingers 2, 1, and 4, although you can use 3. And I'm using thumb, index, and middle to gently pluck and come away from the bass. That's called a free stroke. And you can play all at the same time, or arpeggiate them, just do different combinations of fingers. So that's what a chord is, and that's the chord that you form when you start and do that treatment of 1, 3, 5, or 1, 3, 7, on the very first note of the E major scale. What you have to notice, though, is that that scale has more than one note. It has 7 different notes. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and D sharp. Okay. And we can form a chord on any one of those different notes. We've already done the first one, that's E major 7. That's the one chord, and that's what musicians will say, that's the one chord. And they often use Roman numerals and uppercase for major. Now, chord voicings are like this. You can play different types of chord on that E. This is just a very basic E major chord. This is an E sus2. This is an E with a 5th and a 10th up here. These are different voicings, but for this lesson I'm really concentrating on these easy to play major and minor 7th chords. That was the 1 chord, so the next chord is the 2 chord. So this is F sharp, and we apply the same treatment. F sharp is now number 1. And we're always going to find, or not always, the 7 chord will do something different. But we're going to find the 1, the 3, and the 7. F sharp is the 1. Just need to know your notes. F sharp, G sharp, A would be 3. C sharp would be 5. And E would be 7. If you know your scale really, really well, you just play until you hit each degree that you need. You get this chord shape here. It's different to the first one. First chord in an E major key is E major 7, if we're doing 7th chords. Then we have F sharp minor 7, and that's the 2 chord. Lowercase because it's minor. Already we can hear some music going on there. If this is already confusing you a bit, I have a music theory for bass players course that goes through all of this and much, much more in extreme detail with examples all the way through. I'll put a link for that below. In this lesson, I can't go through everything. It'll take too long. So I'm just going to say that when we do the same thing with the 3 chord, That's G sharp. That's the note built from the third note of the E major scale. We get the same quality as the second chord. Quality is major seventh, minor seventh, dominant, etc. So we have E major 7, F sharp minor 7, G sharp minor 7. And I'm not really going to mess around too much with different voicings. I'm just going to play these voicings that you've got on this PDF. But needless to say, I mean, you could just do power chords, root 5. Sounds very different, right? That would still be, you know, 1, 2, 3, but using very, very basic shapes. The 4 chord is the same as the 1 chord, major 7. Now here's where we can start to explain a bit. You can do a chord progression like this, 1, 4 chord progression. So the 1 was the E major 7, and the 4 was the A major 7. You might have heard songs that sound a bit like that. Using simpler chord shapes, or chord voicings, not shapes, because it's quite hard to play this. That's a 1-4 chord progression in the key of E major. I'll show you what you might play over that in a very simple pop style bass line, and you're going to like this. Pretty simple. Just root notes. But it's essential you know the underlying harmony, the chords. So you can do this, E to A. Now, I know I'm now on the 4. I know the quality of the chord there is major 7. So I'm just playing a major 7th arpeggio. Now notice now I'm back to bass player mode. We don't do this in songs, so it's nice to practice and it's good for some styles of solo bass playing, but you need to know the arpeggio, which is basically the chord, but playing the notes one by one rather than all together. But now I can flesh things out a bit if I want. And stuff like that. That's just notes from the key. So we need to know the key. That's E major. We need to know those notes absolutely everywhere on the bass, not just this one position and not just going up. Also know it going down. Then I can connect the notes of chord progressions together. And that is just an E major pentatonic scale. That's the bass player's secret weapon. It just sounds good all the time. Back to chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5 chord, as that's called, is an interesting one. It only happens once in the sequence of chords in a major scale, and it's a dominant. It's a root, a major 3rd, major 7th, be there, minor 7th, be there, but it's sort of a mixture. It has a major 3rd and a minor 7th. And you might have heard this, you know, 2-5-1 progression. The 5 has a strong pull to the 1. So the 5 chord is dominant, it means strong. And that is a very interesting chord. In a major key, it happens on the 5 and nowhere else. I will just stop right now to say that I'm explaining everything in like a box though. This is what happens in a major key. But what if you wanted to mix things up a bit and do stuff that is, the fancy term is non-diatonic. Diatonic pertains to these scales, 7-note scales, like the major scale. And if you just stick to one key, it's a little boring. There's a chord progression I love that does this. So the 4 chord is major, right? But you can make it minor. I'm not sure who first invented that. One of the amazing classical composers, probably. But you hear that. What about this? You definitely would have heard this. Let's do 1 to 4. We're now borrowing chords from a different key. This is overcomplicating things for this lesson, so I'm going to stop talking about that a bit. But I needed to talk about that because one of the questions was, how do we form chord progressions? I'm giving you a set of rules and you can break them. There's reharmonizations, there's jazz where you can modulate, there's loads of different things. That comes from studying music by yourself, listening to music, figuring out some chord progressions and doing this for yourself. So there is the 5 chord. The next one, the 6 chord, is the same as the 2 and the 3. It's minor. I'm just transferring the chord to the E string. I probably do have a resource somewhere with that, so I'm not going to go into it now. This is all minor, so it has a different feel and vibe to it now. Let's change that round a bit. Let's go from the C sharp minor. Again, you're not going to be playing this, but you could take this to a rehearsal or a jam session, and now you can talk to a guitar player. Play a C sharp minor 7 to, what was that? A G sharp minor 7. You know, you can compose. You might be going like this though. Or more realistically. That's the root. There's a groove. There's the root. That was a C sharp minor pentatonic scale. That's related to E major pentatonic. And here's a lesson right now on related keys. I'm not going to go into it in this lesson. Already too much. Final chord, the 7 chord. Now I'm playing a 5th here because it's a bit weird. All the way from the beginning, we've had 2 frets across, 1 string up is a perfect 5th, and now we have a flat 5. So that's that shape there. It's not used very much, that chord, in non-jazz genres, so you probably don't have to worry about that too much. But with everything I've just given you, even just playing across 1 string and not worrying about some of the other shapes, you can come up with chord progressions. Let's do that now. Let's go. 1 4 1 4 1. Your bass equivalent would be know the arpeggios, know the notes of the chord separated. But that was one of the questions, is how are chord progressions formed? Well, they're not magic, they come from the scale, the key. You've got 1, 3, 5, 7. You can keep going. 9. I love the 9th. Here's the 5. Here's that note down the octave. It's still the 5. That's the octave. These are the notes that you're going to create bass lines from. And I haven't done anything different. I'm just playing notes from the scale. That's all. Let's use that 6 chord. That's really nice. can hear we're going somewhere with this. This isn't a composition lesson, but that could be a section, could be the intro. And again, you could play this on piano or guitar. You'd be playing a C sharp minor 7 chord to an A major 7 chord, or any voicing of that you want. Then you could maybe do another section. Maybe that could be another section. That's the 3 to the 2. You could argue that I'm now minor, and so I'm in a minor key, the C sharp minor key. I'm not going to argue that now. It will complicate things too much. So 3 to 2. So that would be the intro. This is a drum beat. Then you could brighten things up. A very common chord progression is 1, 5, 6, 4. Root note, it would be this. Power chords, it'll be this. Notice how different that sounds to 7th chords. I'm just playing the root and the 5th. If you do want to write music, you need to be in control of tempo, beats, different feels, and a bit more harmony. You know, you've got harmony, rhythm, melody. This is all in my theory course. And having a bit of a knowledge of that just widens your musicality. It makes you play better, and you're able to jam, you're able to improvise, you're able to write, you're able to do more things. A lot of people think theory it closes the door and it makes you cold and like a robot. Well, it will if you play that way. I think it broadens horizons. I think there's nothing wrong with learning music theory. So that was just in the key of E. If you get into jazz, you'll have things like this, where you have, 2, 5, 1 in the key of E. And then the next part of the song, it'll do another 2, 5, 1, but we've modulated to a different key. And we're still using very simple chord progressions, a 2, 5, 1, but we're just now not staying in one key. We're moving to different keys. You can get as complex with this or not as you want. I think in one of the recent lessons I did, I had a backing track. You can go and search this out. It was 2 or 3 lessons ago. I had a backing track where I had a minor, and it was an A minor chord. By the way, that's the same shape as the 2 and the 3 I just showed you. Just move up to the A, 12th fret A string. And then same thing, just up on C sharp minor. Maybe I'll go down here. This is a non-diatonic chord progression. I'm just taking a minor chord and moving it round randomly. This isn't conforming to any rules like before. And that is another way to make chord progressions, not to stick to rules, just to explore and do whatever sounds good. Certainly as a bass player, when you know what to play underneath a chord, you're really starting to get somewhere. So in that instance, I'm going to end the lesson here because just like my last lesson, there's renovations going on and it's getting a bit noisy. But what I'm going to do is direct you to this lesson right here, which is shapes that you can use over a minor chord. And there are loads of shapes. And that's just what I did right there. I used a few of those shapes, and it's all about having a chord and knowing what notes to play with it. and also learning to hear the sound of those. And when you do that, it's really going to absolutely revolutionize your bass playing. If you do get anything from these lessons, please do like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel. That really, really helps, as does checking out some of my courses. That kind of allows me to make these lessons for free and to make a living. So thanks so much for allowing me to do that. I'll put all those links below, and I will see you on the next lesson.